And we are back with another episode of the Hogstine. We're coming off of a stunning and sometimes occasionally boring win over the New York Giants on Thanksgiving Day. At least it was a victory. We are joined by a skeleton crew here as Alex and Sean are both out. But, of course, we always have Jamal here, who is one of our core four. How are you today, Jamal?
And now, here's your host,
I'm
Sean Conti.
Earlier, I overate. And I'm still dealing with it. And after I overate, I still decided to get some cheesecake. So I'm in extra pain, but I'm doing all right. I don't know if the skins help because I'm still in pain, but I'm doing okay, man.
Well, yeah, the skins put us all in pain. And joining us, I'm so excited to have back. Joining us is one of our original crew, Kelly. Welcome back, Kelly, for another Hogsty. It's good to have you after such a long time.
Hey, thanks, man. It's really good to be back. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. It's good to be back with the Hogstye fan. And, coming off of a win, it's good to be anywhere right now.
Yeah. And, guys, I don't know if the Redskins were in a tryptophan-induced haze or if it was just the fact that they were playing like their fourth and fifth string team. It looked, the fact that it was more like a fourth game, the preseason roster or what. But this game started off really, really ugly. I don't even know where to begin with this mess. At least we got a victory. Let's do general impressions first. General impressions of the game before we get into the details. Jamal?
All right, yeah, I'm about to say, because, my volume low, so just cue me in.
We're having technical issues here, folks. Bear with us. It's Thanksgiving Day.
So, general thoughts, it was first half, it was just pretty ugly. And I tweeted, because I wasn't necessarily sure, like, was it the fact that this game was just not good off the strength of the type of teams that's on the field in terms of the Redskins injuries and just not being able to execute offensively, and then the Giants just not having a good offense, period. But their defense is somewhat healthy. Like, was it just the fact that it was just a bad matchup tonight, or was it the fact that it was I don't know. I don't know what it was in the first half. But point being, it was pretty sloppy. A lot of key mistakes for both sides, holdings, drops. The Redskins had a lot of holding penalties, I believe. Kirk Cousins took a few sacks that I think he could have tried to avoid. I wouldn't say that every single one was necessarily on him. But point being, it was sloppy. Got in our way very often. Second half was a different story. We was able to run the ball in the third quarter, helped us out tremendously, helped Kirk Cousins out tremendously. And we was able to close the deal, which is something that we weren't able to do for a few weeks. Out of the past 3 or 4 weeks, we weren't able to close out. So, it helped us out tremendously. So it was a good way to close it, but a very sloppy start and slow start to the game.
Yeah, it helps that we were playing the Giants instead of the Saints, in terms of closeout. But Kelly, what were your initial impressions of this game?
Well, I agree with Jamal. It was a sloppy game. I think it was very clear you were looking at two teams that were coming off of just a couple days rest. Both of those teams played overtime games on Sunday and then had to turn it around and get ready for a Thursday game. And we had one guy starting on our offensive line that had never played center before and has just joined the Redskins. We had backup guys. We had Catalina coming in at one point. I think it was a sort of a mash unit, hodgepodge quilt of players that aren't gelled, and that's why you got that preseason impression. You're seeing names you don't know on the field, and you're seeing guys that aren't used to playing together. I agree. I think they really came together. The running game. I think once P. Ryan got going, you started to see some holes open up for him as well, and that pulled it all together. But it's late in the season, and we're hurt, man.
Yeah. Let's go over some stats here real fast. Game numbers before we get too far into this. Kirk Cousins was 19 of 31 for 242 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, had a quarterback rating of 93.8. Samaje Perine was 21 carries for 96 yards, 4.6 yards. Average of the long was 16. Byron Marshall had a decent day for his first real carries of the season. 4 carries, 18 yards for 4.5 yards per carry. James Crowder was the stud of the receiving corps, 7 receptions, 7 receptions, 141 yards, despite having an injury. Samaje Perine, 3 receptions, 30 yards. Josh Doxson, 2 for 28. Niles Paul, 3 for 16. It goes down from there. And on the Giants side, Eli had a day that isn't going to go on his highlight reel. He was 11 for 24, 77 yards passing, which is just incredible. 4 sacks, quarterback rating of 53.6. Rushing-wise, Wayne Gallman was the leading rusher, which is something I didn't think was going to happen. 9 carries, 37 yards. Orleans Darkwa was 11 for 30. And Shane Vereen was 3 for 18. Receiving wise, Roger Lewis was 3 for 26, and the rest of it, frankly, wasn't really worth talking about. So, let's talk about the Redskins' offense. And it was a mash unit, on the offensive line. And Tyler Catalina was in at tackle at one point in time. I guess let's start with the game Kirk Cousins had, because at points he was awful, and at points he actually looked like the Kirk Cousins of old, and I couldn't quite figure it out if it was just because of the incredible amount of injuries, or if he was just off, or what happened. So Jamal, let's talk about Kirk Cousins a little bit first.
All right. Well, overall with Cousins, again, I think there was some sacks that he could have avoided. I think the most Redskins play of the day was the one where he tripped in the middle of the field trying to throw it in the flats, and that ended up being a pick six. And that's not necessarily all on Cousins. That literally is like a Redskins play because it's really nothing else. There's a multitude of mistakes that happens on that play. The ball, first Cousins trips, the ball sails, the running back can't catch it, but it tips in the air. The cornerback runs it back for a touchdown. But yeah, so I mean, that's one of the plays. It was just a bad play overall. In the red zone, he's trying to scramble. He trips. He ends up making up for it on the next play with a touchdown to Jameson Crowder. But the play right before that, he tries to scramble out to his left and he trips. And he just falls. So I mean, there's opportunities from him in the pocket where he had opportunities to make plays, but it's just the fact that he just failed to capitalize. In terms of looking down the field, I kind of actually thought that the Giants were playing good coverage. They had good coverage on the receivers for the most part, because we did see a lot of plays where Kirk Cousins was patting the ball a lot. He wasn't really getting out of his hands. Well, if you have that much time, you don't necessarily have to throw it away. And that's what Kirk Cousins didn't do. He didn't throw it away. He took some sacks. They could have been unnecessary. He could have avoided them. But at the same time, if you have that much time, you're allowing your receivers to make plays. He could have just extended by escaping the pocket. So it was a lot.
Well, I think in the first half, especially, Cousins had so much time. That he would look downfield, scan. Go to maybe his second, third read, and then finally check it down. But that was in the first half before the pass rush really started to get at him. I thought, the interception play, I can't let it go because I really have to think that if there was actual grass in the middle of the field at FedEx Field, that maybe his toe wouldn't have got stuck, because it honestly looked like his toe got stuck in the dirt. And that's what made the ball sail, which is, set up that kind of volleyball play chain of events that ended up in a pick six. So I kind of blame it on the field. Yeah, it was Cousins threw the ball, but that play, I really wonder if it wasn't a turf problem more than anything.
Yeah, Collinsworth tried to emphasize. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right. I was just going to agree. I think that what Jamal says, right, that was a chain of events play. The turf caused the foot caused the body not to turn, the body not turning caused the ball to sail. Still, even with all of that, he still managed to hit the receiver in both hands. The ball hits you in both hands, you've got to you got to do anything but knock it to the defender. You got to catch that. So, I think that was kind of a fluky play. I don't think that Cousins played terrible. One thing that I've seen about Cousins, when we started doing the show a couple of years ago, the big knock on Cousins was as soon as he made one mistake, he would compound it. He would get frustrated, he'd beat himself in the head, and he'd get out there and he'd try to force something and do even worse. He doesn't do that so much anymore. I think the problem with Cousins now is if he's not confident in his offensive line, he doesn't know quite what to do. He gets hesitant. and should I run? Should I not run? You saw the play where he looked behind him to figure out if a guy was still chasing him. He's not sure what to do when he doesn't have his people in front of him. I think that we saw that most when Morgan Moses went down, is when we saw him. They just ran the ball. They weren't even going to try to pass it with Moses out.
By the way, I don't understand why, if Moses goes out and you're down to like your 18th string tackle like this, why not move Brandon Scherf over to tackle and put Catalina in at guard? Scherf is.
I wrote the same note.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. Because if of all of them, if you have an emergency, Scherf's the guy who's the tackle. Catalina's the guy who's barely on the roster. I didn't understand that move. I mean, it didn't hurt them too much in the end. They won the game, and Kirk Cousins wasn't hurt. But I thought that was dumb, and I didn't understand it personally.
Yeah, I think I actually saw that tweet and it made sense. But maybe, and I'm just saying maybe. But what if they may have just said that's something that has to be worked out, throughout a week, like where Sheriff actually gets reps in practice at tackle. That's just my guess. I don't necessarily know, because at the same time it was an emergency situation, so they could have put Sheriff at tackle. So yeah, who knows? But at the same time, I think that same drive we were able to run the ball, and I think Moses came in late in that drive or the very next drive. So things worked out well in terms of production on the ground. So not too bad.
I think that we
go ahead.
I think that we ran the ball from the end of the third quarter clear through to something like 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. We just ran the ball. It was a really long drive, and it was, that was the kind of thing that I was really happy with the offense. Was once P. Ryan got going, they were able to open those holes and they were able to run that clock. I thought that was beautiful.
Well, and by the way, if everybody noticed, I'd like to point out that the majority of those runs came to the Redskins' left side. They were just demolishing the Giants on the Redskins' left, Giants' right side. And that's running behind Ty and Secchi, for the most part. It took a while to get rolling, but it finally did. And in answer to the, how much did they rush? Into the first quarter, it was 8 passes, 5 runs. Into the second quarter, it's 18 passes, 7 runs. And this is when it kind of started to flip. And by the end of the game, we were at 26 rushes and 31 passes, so it ended up being a pretty good run-pass balance, there. And I got to say, just as an aside, Jake Gruden has done a pretty darn good job this year of balancing out the run and the pass more than he has. That was my big complaint about him last year. I just couldn't yell enough about how it was such an overbalanced passing game, and granted, the run hasn't been good basically all year, with the exception of this week, but I think Jay's calling a better game, generally speaking.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We can't get off the offense here, by the way, without talking about Jameson Crowder. What a day by Jameson Crowder. This is the type of day we've been waiting for this guy to produce all year long. I don't know off the top of my head if that was his best game of his career, but it's certainly up there.
Yeah, he had a career high.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying he had a career high in yards.
It was career high, definitely a career high. Okay, and he had a knee injury on top of that. Part of that was some of those passes he was just wide open. In the cover too, he beat the zone. Kind of underneath the safety's back half there on that 38-yard catch. But nonetheless, yes, he was open, but just career day. And I think it's safe to say the Redskins wouldn't have won this game without him out there.
I think the part of it is that. I think part of it is the fact that the Giants. I don't think the Giants were playing their best corners. They had some guys out of corner, Jameson Crowder. All credit to him. He was able to get open. Once he caught the ball, he was able to turn and get moving with it as well. So I'd love to see what his yard after catch was, but it was a really pretty game for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you weren't on the pregame show or preview show, Kelly, but we talked about Yak in the pregame show and or preview show. And the Redskins are basically tops in the NFL in yards after catch by receivers this year. Which is how the offense works. I'll cut you off though, Jamal. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just adding on to to what Kelly was saying. So basically, I just feel like it was out of all the receivers, he played the most consistent tonight, and I think that's one of the things that when people and just to cut some people some slack, when people say we don't have any weapons, we don't have any receivers, that's not necessarily true. I think just to help everybody out, this year has been a year where every single receiver we have is just terribly inconsistent. And Jamison Crowder is a weapon. Same thing with Josh Doxson. You know how to use him. He is a weapon. Um, so with that being said, Crowder played his most complete game this year last night because this is coming out on Friday. So he played his complete game last night. So with that being said, Crowder, I mean, he's a weapon. So with that, it's just the fact that he was open a lot today. He was splitting zones and he was beating man coverage. So I mean, that just says a lot. So there is no thing that we have no weapons. We have weapons. They're just inconsistent. And today he had a very consistent game.
What did we think about Byron Marshall in his first real action? I mean, last week he played, but it was really only special teams. This is the first time we've seen Byron Marshall in action. He took over the third down. It started off with him taking over the third down role, and with P. Ryan's injury halfway through the game, he was the lead back there for a while before P. Ryan came back. Do we have any thoughts of Byron Marshall? To me, I thought he looked like at a minimum, a competent NFL running back at least.
Oh, you go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that I agree. I think that he didn't blow me away, but he also didn't mess up, with the exception of that one pass that he let get off his hands, which ended up being a pick six. I think that he handled himself well. He picked up a couple of blitzes, but I think that the pass blocking needs to get better. I think a number of the situations where Kirk found himself with nowhere to go with football was when Maxwell was back there in protection.
So yeah, for me, and remember, Steve, I told you, I think when we signed Byron Marshall, is the fact that none of these guys that we were going to get who were going to be game changers or anything special. And I felt that we needed to sign a vet, just a vet, get it out the way. There's no point in investing into a younger back like this late in the season and expecting him to do marvelous things. So with that being said, the way Marshall played, he was okay. Nothing that stood out for me that was great with him or outstanding with him. In any phase actually, and then in terms of, I mean, his return game was okay. If that accounts for anything, he was good in the return game. But in terms of, on offensively, he didn't really look that great, trying to catch a high pass. I'm not saying that you have to catch everything thrown to you, but at the same time, it's a critical moment. And you cannot afford to, leave a pass in the air like that, regardless. Like, you have to come down. The ball
hit him in both of his hands. It hit both hands.
Yeah, so, I mean, with that being said, he wasn't nothing special for me. And I can't even say average, just okay. I mean, that's it. Nothing special.
I mean, fair enough, but I don't think that, and now's not the time to debate this. It'll be another show, but I don't think a vet would have done, appreciably better than he did, at least in terms of running. But, it is what it is. What do we have any, before we move on to defense, do we have any other offensive thoughts about this game?
What the hell was going on that? I want to do a fake punt, and there's Niles Paul. This is more of a special teams thing, but I don't know if we have a special teams segment, but I'm going to make one real quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it looked like Niles Paul was lining up under center on that punt play that never ran, same as we did. I think it was last week, might have been the week before. We did a fake, which was Niles Paul under center getting the snap. It looked like we wanted to do that. They didn't give us the look that they wanted. It was stacked on the line, called the timeout, and then couldn't pull things together enough and screwed it all up. And then I learned something about football last night that I did not know before, which is apparently when you are the punting team and you put your hands on the football and possess it, that doesn't necessarily end the play.
Not if you ball and intentionally run the ball in the end zone like Pete Robertson did.
I thought that was just kind of momentum, but I didn't know that rule. Clearly, most of the people on the field knew the rule, but that one dude did not.
I mean, his teammates.
I feel for him because I didn't know either.
His teammates were screaming at him, after the play. And by the way, that was Pete Robertson's first game of the year. I think we mentioned this on the preview show, but they brought him up this week from the practice squad, and we may see him go right back down because I think he got another penalty later in the game too. So
it was
not
a good start for Pete Robinson.
A terrible showing. I think it's kind of weird how these special teams have been playing these last couple of weeks. Just not disciplined, honestly, and not focused. Even if Pete Robertson didn't know the rules, he should have. He's on special teams. He has to understand these things. Quentin Dump, everybody but Pete Robertson knew what was going on. Last week, who was it? The cornerback, Hosley. Hosley was unable to down the goal line at the 1 yard line because his feet got twitchy. He kept moving them. So I mean, it's just very undisciplined play where you can have better field position for your defense on an offense who really couldn't move the ball all day. Even though they couldn't move the ball, it's still unacceptable because you have to, you're not going to face an offense like this in the future. You have to have these things just, down packed. So, it just goes to show how undisciplined they are in some aspects of the game.
Yeah. Now, before we move on to defense, I just like to point out that Vernon Davis was completely shut out today. That he only had one target on the day, which honestly surprised me given the amount of injuries we had. I was a little surprised that Davis was completely shut out. But let's talk about defense here. And Eli Manning was held to 76 yards passing. He was sacked, a number of times, including by Junior Gillette. It's good to see Junior get another sack. Finally. Now, sack fumble. My question now, though, was the 77 yards due to Giants' offensive incompetence, or was it due to a much better showing by the Redskins secondary than we've seen? Jamal's already saying no. Go ahead, man.
I'm about to say, don't set that question up. I mean, I understand, it's a good conversation starter, but, it's 70% Giants. Put it that way. 70% Giants incompetence. I'll leave it at that, honestly.
No, I mean, I wasn't. I was not setting up the opposite answer. I completely agree with you. The Giants are utterly incompetent, with all the injuries they have, and Eli's just a guy that I don't understand why those in the national media think he's a Hall of Fame candidate. He's a guy that I'm not sure the Super Bowl rings are really enough to get him in there, because we've seen a lot of games like this from Eli. So, Kelly, where am I wrong?
You're not wrong. Eli will make it into the Hall of Fame because eventually, if you quarterback two Super Bowl winning teams, you're gonna. But he doesn't deserve to be there. He doesn't have the numbers. He doesn't have the leadership. He doesn't have the skill. But he'll end up there just on the merit of those two games. And
maybe his last name on top of that.
And his last name doesn't hurt him in this situation. But in terms of last night's game, the Giants are a bad team. And unlike the Kansas City Chiefs last weekend, we did not allow ourselves to lose to a bad team, which is, that's the first step in being a good team, is you don't give yourself you don't give games away to bad teams. And so I was really glad to see that we didn't allow that to happen.
Yeah. Now, Orleans Dark was a guy, he was my dark horse for this game, and that utterly didn't come true. I was trying to be smart and point out that he had been their most successful running back. He didn't have a terrible, yes, he did. I can't even pretend like he didn't have a terrible game. He just got nowhere. And I was afraid that this was going to be a game where the Giants were going to try and pound the ball, and it just didn't happen for them. So sort of the same question here. Is the Giants' lack of a running game, was this 70% Giants, poor execution, 30% Redskins? What was the reason behind the Giants' lack of a running game?
So I want to take a shot at this one. Sure. A lot of it, a good chunk of your running game comes at the end of the game when you're ahead. Teams who win games have the lead at the end of the game. That's how you win it. And that's when you're piling up. That's when Ryan piled up his running yards. That's where the running yards come from. If you can't establish something early, neither team established anything early. It was just a bad game first half. The Redskins were able to establish before the Giants did, and then the Giants just didn't have. They didn't have a good opportunity to establish a running game. And when they did, they failed to do so. It was just their offensive line played terrible the whole game. Ryan Kerrigan abused the crap out of them, and they never got anything going. And if you can't ever get anything started, then your rushing game is going to be the first thing that fails because you're going to have to turn to the passing game to try to make up for it.
Yeah. I think I actually underestimated how bad the offensive line for the Giants are. So I think, Steve, I told you I expected Darkwa to have a good game this weekend.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it was all on him as a runner, but more so the fact that, Stacey McGee was getting in the backfield a few times tonight or last night, and that typically does not happen at all. It just really doesn't. He was getting a lot of penetration. The inside linebackers was able to, fill some lanes. So, things were working out for the front seven overall. And that typically doesn't happen lately, especially without. Did Matt Ioannidis ever come back? 'Cause I know he was hurt. Did he come back?
If Matt Ioannidis came back in, he did not make an impact afterwards. Honestly, I didn't see him. I wouldn't we don't have the report from the Redskins yet on the plays and everything, so I wouldn't swear to it. But I don't think he came back in. If he did,
I didn't notice him.
Yeah, if he did, he certainly didn't do anything.
Okay, so yeah, just basically, it's just the fact that the front seven had a real good game against a bad offensive line. So I underestimated them, and I thought the fact that our defensive line was banged up, they would have been able to have some success against us. Like it even the playing field. I had felt that's what I felt coming into the game, but unfortunately for the Giants, things didn't work out for them. So it was just a difficult night for them in Darkwa.
By the way, I know this is a little bit off the beaten path, but I can't let the show go on any farther without saying what in the heck is going on with FedEx Field, the field.
They need turf.
They need turf. It looks worse this year than it ever has. I don't remember the field looking this bad in years past. Honest to God, there was a shot at one point of the field above from, I guess, probably the blimp, and it really looked like there was just a big brown streak right through the middle of the field. Redskins, if you guys are listening to this, and I know you guys occasionally do, because you've called me about bad things we've said. Please tell Dan Snyder to just bite the bullet and put turf in. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing. I think the NFL needs to step in and tell the Redskins to fix their field.
And
honestly,
fields get players hurt, man. And I understand that injuries happen on the field regardless, but bad fields get people hurt all the time. Key
True.
Players hurt their knees on this field. Robert Griffin, Chris Clemens. I can't think of those are the two biggest names in recent years. Robert Griffin and Chris Clemens. In the same playoff game. Now that I think about it, same playoff game they hurt their knees. So it's just a terrible situation.
Well, I attribute the injury, as we talked about. I attribute Kirk Cousins' interception today. At least partway on the turf, because his toe got caught in the dirt.
It messed him up.
And Doxson 2 weeks ago against the Vikings in the back of the end zone. Yeah. So these things happen, man. But it's a lot to do. Yeah. It's a lot to do with the field, and a lot can change. You can get better production from your offense if you change to a turf field. So it's a lot of things that can go well with a turf field if you just bite the bullet and go ahead and get it done. Like, what are you?
Yeah, I would say I'd be surprised. I was about to say I was surprised that the Redskins wouldn't fix this, but then I realized we're talking about the Redskins and the Redskins front office, who are incredibly stubborn and make bad decisions about many things. So I guess I'm not surprised at all.
One thing that I think is important.
Who knows?
Yeah, one thing important to remember in this when we're talking about that, Dan Snyder's a nostalgic guy. He likes the nostalgia. He likes the old. RFK was a grass stadium. It was a mud stadium, and back in those days, it was the turf stadiums that people were busting their knees on. But yeah, somebody's got to get in his ear and explain to him that they have made a lot of advancements in the way that artificial turf goes these days.
Yeah, I mean it's not carpet. It's not carpet, on cement like it was at the old Veterans Stadium.
Yeah, Eagles. Yeah.
I mean, but more than that, Dan Snyder's a nostalgia guy, but he's a winning guy more than he is a nostalgia guy. You'd think that
he'd like to be.
Yeah, he'd like to be. Yeah, he's not a winning guy. We don't win, but anyway. Okay, defense. What else of note did we see on defense? The one thing is the Giants wide receivers just completely disappeared the entire game and dropped an inconceivable number of passes.
Yeah, they got blessed. And that's one of the things that I was noticing throughout the game. Honestly, Jesus Christ, this new phone just keeps falling off the bed. If it wasn't really for the receivers, who knows how many critical first downs or third downs that Eli converts, because there was a lot of receivers that got in the way of them moving the ball. So that was an issue for them. And in terms of our cornerbacks, we don't really know how well they played right now because of the fact that they were having issues initially, like checking these guys, but they were dropping passes. Evan Ingram, I think, dropped 3. So I mean that's a problem within itself. The secondary, they played okay for the most part. I do like Kendall Fuller. I mean, just the way he got this interception, it was pretty much thrown to him where he had an opportunity to make a play on the ball, and he actually did it. He didn't drop it. Norman has dropped a few of them already this year. So, I mean, that's a problem. But at the same time, when you throw it to Kendall Fuller's side, I haven't seen him drop many interceptions this year. And he just shows how he's becoming better and better as a slot cornerback as opposed to an outside guy. Norman and Breland had, for the most part, okay games as well. But I mean, as a group, as a unit, I don't know yet because the Giants dropped so many passes.
Yeah, Fuller has got to be a candidate for most improved player over last year because the man looked helpless. Last year in coverage for a good bit of the game. He did. He just looked terrible. And he's been, such a breath of fresh air this year. Our colleague, Adam Taraski kept telling me over and over and over again, Kendall, Fuller can play because, Adam played with him at Virginia Tech, and I just laughed it off, but he sure was right. And it was a great pick. I think he has better hands than Norman, this year. Kelly, thoughts on Giants wide receivers, Redskins secondary?
Well, I think a lot of the credit has to go to the defensive line. I think that they were getting good pressure on Eli without sending a lot of help. And I think that's where it begins. If you can, and the question there is, was it the Giants offensive line that was playing terrible, or was the defensive line playing well? We got some production out of Junior Gillette that was mentioned. 2 sacks from Ryan Kerrigan. There was good play from the guys up front. That's where it all begins. That makes it easy for the secondary to play well when the quarterback doesn't have a lot of time to do things. Overall, I think a really disciplined game from the Redskins defense. One thing that we did not see last night, which we have seen a lot in the first part of the season, although he's toned it down, there was a good stretch of games there where Breland was picking up dumb penalties game after game. Pass interference stuff, holding stuff. I think he got called for holding multiple times in one game. We didn't see any of that from him this game or the last game. So I think that Breland's progression in terms of his maturity and discipline is helping the defense a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Does anybody have other defensive thoughts before we move on?
Not much. Not much. I guess good for Gillette. Personally, good for Gillette because it took him what are we in? Week 11, week 12.
12. Week 12.
The fact that it took him this long to get his first sack.
Well, he had a sack earlier in the year.
Yeah,
so
but it was called back though. You talking about the one against the one I can't even remember actually. Never
The
mind.
one he got a penalty on? No, there was one earlier. Here, keep talking. I'm going to look up his stat. I'm convinced he had one sack earlier.
No,
Go
because
ahead.
I had looked it up when because somebody actually said one sack earlier this year on Twitter, like before we started our show tonight. So, I had looked it up and I only saw one, which was credited to the New York Giants. So I mean, if there's another one, then I guess that's fine. But from my view, I thought this was his first sack of the
Okay.
year.
Pro Football Reference credits him with a half a sack against Philadelphia. So, there you go.
Okay, so I mean, half sack against
Yeah.
Philadelphia. All right. Well, his first full sack, I guess. For him to get there, get home, he's been creating pressure throughout the season, that's one thing. But the same thing we were saying about Preston Smith, it's not much if you don't get home. And throughout, matter of fact, let me ask y'all. This is actually a pretty important question too. Um, there's another time in the season where Preston Smith has disappeared. And that just dawned on me because of the fact, last year Preston Smith he was pretty much gone the entire season.
Right.
The year before that he was gone until the second half of the season. Like the last 4 games specifically, he was gone. Um, and now he's disappeared again for the most part. He's not making much of an impact either. So I mean, and it's kind of swept under the rug because of all the other issues that we got going on. So I mean, I guess now, do y'all does that even bother y'all at this point?
Well, yeah, it does bother me, and I don't know if the TV cameras caught it, but the Air Force actually did a missing man formation flyby at FedEx Field in honor of Preston Smith. Over halftime, if you guys caught it, but no, this is the problem with Preston Smith. He has his moments where he has flashes where he shows both speed and power. And it's the guy that you thought that we were drafting, sort of like an improved version of Ryan Kerrigan almost. But he's so inconsistent, and at this point, I refuse to believe that the season is wearing him down because what is he, a third-year pro now?
Yeah.
I don't accept that. So I think, we heard, rumblings. No, it was you, Jamal. Actually, was it you in training camp that said he looked like he was dogging it? In early in training camp when you were there. Was that you that said that?
I think it was me that I said I saw Preston Smith quit on a couple reps.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
that was him. Against Trent Williams and I forgot somebody else. It may have been Trent Williams twice. Where yeah, it wasn't that good from Preston Smith. Um, but it was kind of
So it makes
surprising
me.
because he got off to a good start the first 4 games, and everybody thought Preston Smith was back, but yeah, and then
And this is what we saw of him in years past too. So maybe this is just who Preston is, and maybe he's just not a guy who's going to produce 16 quality games in a row. And when it comes time to re-sign him, the Redskins may take that into consideration.
I think there's one thing that we got to bear in mind here too is we put a high draft pick on Ryan Anderson for a reason. We know what we have in Ryan Kerrigan. And then we've got, Trenton Murphy. He's been having his own personal issues. You have Preston Smith and you've got Junior Gillette. This is really supposed to be Junior Gillette's show me year. We waited a few years for him to get on the field. And he was very confident. Y'all are going to get what you've been waiting for. Here we come. And it really hadn't been there. I agree he's getting some pressure, but not the kind of thing that we were kind of led to expect out of that guy. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what do we have in Anderson because that guy was playing in Alabama. He was a beast. When Jonathan Allen's healthy again, and we've got more pressure up from that D line, having more guys like that flying around is good. I don't think that we're going to see all these guys next year, though. I think we're going to have one or two missing.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I like how you called Trent Murphy's issues personal issues. In the personal issues, of course, are he cheated by taking steroids.
Yeah,
And that's the personal issue. And of course, the Redskins are, the Redskins asked him to gain weight and then lose weight and then gain weight. But yeah, I think, yeah, it was. But anyway, Murphy may be one of those guys that are gone.
so
But
yeah,
go ahead, Jimmy.
just looking at, I pulled up Preston's numbers while y'all were talking. Yeah, he
Yeah.
has 4.5 sacks on the season. Literally, all 4.5 came week 1 through 6. He got a half sack in against San Francisco, and he's been quiet ever since. So
I think he got a game ball or two from us early on in the season, and we have barely mentioned him. So it's a good point to bring up. I think Preston. This is just who Preston Smith is. He's never going to be that consistent.
yeah, I agree.
What can you say?
Before you move off of defense, I
Yeah.
think we'd be doing a disservice not to bring up the fact that Zach Brown's playing hurt. He is still flying around. He's still making plays. He is still in on a whole bunch of tackles. I don't know if he still is. I know at least a week or two ago he was leading the league in tackles. It wouldn't surprise me if he still is. He's a huge part of our defense. And I would say, by far easily the best pickup of the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he played better today. He had a couple down games, frankly, I thought, against the Saints and the Vikings both. But, he had 9 total tackles today, which led the team again. And he looked like he was moving better there a little bit today than he was in weeks past. So maybe that Achilles is a little bit healthier, perhaps. While we're doing this, injuries. We don't have a ton of reports about injuries yet because it's still too early. The Redskins haven't come out with it yet. But just going off of notes, it didn't look like we had any big disasters today. Zach Brown went out with an injury briefly, but came back in. Matt Ioannidis went out and we don't think came back in. Jameson Crowder hurt his knee. P. Ryan was in the locker room for a big chunk of the middle of the game, but came back out and obviously played. Morgan Moses went down, came back in. And so that is all we had for injuries that we know of. We'll have more later in the week for that. Final thoughts before we go into game balls.
I want to say that I think that people have been really harsh on in terms of judging Josh Doctson. I don't think I think that he's about where you would expect him to be if this was his first year, which in some ways it really is. I think that he's playing well. I really like his route running. I love. You saw it today. You also saw it on the one where he fell down, unfortunately. But those 2 plays both struck me as he rope-a-doped the defender into thinking that he was basically quitting on the play, and then burst open. He got a touchdown this time. Great throw from Cousins. And he would have had a touchdown the last time had it not been for him falling on the turf. I think that he's going to be a special player. I think that people need to give him a little bit of time to find his, who he is in the NFL. I don't necessarily think that the right way to use him is to just toss up these 50-50 balls. I know he can get them, but I would rather see him develop as a NFL wide receiver.
I applaud you for, I believe that was the first ever use of the Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope
like that?
in the history of the
show. I got that for you, baby. You know it.
This is why we brought you back, Kelly.
This is why you brought me back,
come
Steve.
up with 40 or 50-year-old boxing references.
Because I'm a rope-a-dope defender. That's why.
Jamal, final thought.
Look, I'll do this. I'll do this just for the sake of the fact that I am a fan, and I feel like it's necessary. We have 5 games left, I believe.
Yes.
So 5
Today
games.
was
We have
the
5
11th
games
game.
left. We're not out of it yet. On paper, the schedule is favorable to us. But at the same time, it's important that we as fans understand that this is not going to be a cakewalk. So do not get your hopes up per se, but there is a chance that we can finish the season strong despite everything that's going on with the roster. So with that being said, the schedule on paper is favorable to us, but at the same time, there is going to be some issues week in and week out. We struggled against a 2-8 Giants team who themselves had injuries and had a poor offensive line. Their defense wasn't even playing that well. It's a long season left, but at the same time, it's going to be tough. However, on paper, things look fine for us down the road. So it does give us hope that we're playing for something all the way to the end of the season. We'll see.
Yeah, that's true. And, it just has to be said that, the Giants, it wasn't just the O-line that was awful. Just the Giants' offense, period, is just awful. But the NBC broadcast crew actually put up a good stat to play along with what you just said, Jamal, which is that to date, the Redskins, we all know that the Redskins have played the toughest schedule in the NFL. However, the last 6 games of the season, which included tonight, the Redskins actually have the easiest schedule in the NFL. So, yes, the Redskins' playoff chances are on life support. It does not look good. Today was a must-win. Every game, frankly, is a must-win from here on out. But considering who they're playing, they have the Cowboys who are reeling coming up next Thursday. We've got the Broncos who aren't any great shakes. We've got the Giants one more time. Who am I missing? The Chargers.
Giants, Chargers, Cardinals,
Cardinals.
Cowboys, and Giants.
Giants again. Every one of those games is at least has the potential to be a winning game. So there is hope left in this. Let's do game balls here. I'll start today because I've been dodging the starting game balls for weeks now. I'm going to give the offensive game ball to Jameson Crowder. I mean, how could you not? 7 catches, 141 yards, played on a bum knee. He was the key to me, the key in the game. He really deserves the game ball. And on defense, I'm going to give it to Junior Galette. I don't know if he's the most deserving, quite frankly, but it was just really good to see him get a sack on a speed move, have a decent game. I can't help but like the guy. Anybody who puts a giant Redskins tattoo on their shoulder when they're not even signed by the team yet, I got to applaud that. So I'm giving my defensive game ball to Jameson Crowder. Kelly, we'll save you for last since you're a guest. Jamal, who are your game balls?
Offensively, I'll go ahead and give it to Jameson Crowder as well. Again, this is one of the most consistent throughout the game from start to finish. It's one of the most consistent games that I've seen a receiver play for us. So I'll give it to Kirk Cousins. I don't know why I had Kirk Cousins on my mind. Maybe because I was looking at Mark Bullock's tweet. Shout out to Mark Bullock. He was just talking about the throw about the dirt, where he threw it in the dirt. So he got his foot caught in the dirt. So excuse me. But Jameson Crowder, he had a lot of chemistry with Kirk Cousins to begin with as well. They knew how to exploit the blitzes. One of the blitzes where he ran up the seams, he was able to read the zone properly, find the soft spots in the zone. He did everything right tonight, and it was consistent from start to finish. So I give it to Jameson Crowder offensively. Defensively, I don't know, man. Like I said, I go ahead and give it to Kendall since he caused the turnover. He ended the game for us. He had the game with interception. So I'll go ahead and give it to Kendall Fuller. Overall, I give the unit a solid game because I give them the game ball as a unit is what I should say because of the fact that neither in the pass game or run game they gave up 100 yards. So, hey, I give them a game ball as a unit. That's fair.
All right, fair enough. Kelly, game balls. What do you think?
I'm not going to give it to Crowder because I don't want him to get a big head. When you get the trifecta from the Hall of Stye, it goes to people.
He may have that framed on his wall, and
he probably does. I'm going to give my offensive game ball to Samaje Perine. I think that he held on to the ball, which was the knock on him early in the season. He fought through an injury, came back. I think that he showed that he has the vision to find the hole when it's there, and he can. He ran. I think he ran with the kind of power that we were looking for when we drafted him. With the exception of 1 or 2 runs, I can't. Whenever he got hit, he was still going forward 3 or 4 yards. Second half, if you look at his, I don't have the stat, but I imagine if you look at his average yards per carry in the second half, when the Giants knew that they were going to be running the ball, I think that he's in the 5 to 6 range in the second half. He ran well.
Absolutely did.
And this was his, this was for him, this was, kind of his breakout game as I can run the football. So I give my offensive ball to Samaje Perine. Defensive side, I'm going to give it to Ryan Kerrigan. I know that we expect sacks from him. We got 2 sacks from him. He's been getting sacks every game. And even though it's expected of you, I think that it still deserves recognition because where would we be if he's not collapsing that tackle and getting in Eli's face on a regular basis and putting him on the ground? And I also have because I'm a guest and I can do this. I'm going to dip into my credit, and I'm going to give a third game ball. Because we have not mentioned Tress Way's name during this broadcast, and you
got to work out today.
As much as the one guy screwed up the down in the ball, he was pinning them back regularly. He was putting them deep each and every time, and he's done that for 2 years now. He's a very good punter. So I just wanted to shout a little bromance out to Tress Way and tell him I love him.
And I'm glad you love him. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. And you don't know this, Kelly, but Tress was a guest on the show a few months ago, and we helped him sell his game, and so he owes us anyway. And so,
see, and there it is.
Yeah, and I'd just like to point out, we're going to end this on a humorous stat. It's a sign that you perhaps didn't have a top quality offensive game when your punter outpunts the quarterback in terms of yardage by over 100 yards. Tressway punted for 308 yards today, and Kirk Cousins only threw for 201 yards. So
yeah, but that's not a Giants side.
Yeah, I'm dead serious.
300
Tressway
punted.
That, according to ESPN, yes, he punted for 308 yards. So 7 punts, 308 yards.
MVP.
Yeah, maybe does. Maybe you're on to something, Kelly. Maybe he did deserve a game ball.
There you go.
And shoot, the Giants punter punted for 9 punts for 371 yards. So we had, folks, almost 700 yards in punting in this game.
That's a Thanksgiving football game right there.
If there was ever an indictment of Thursday night football, it's that stat right there.
Yeah, it has to go.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, we've prattled on long enough here. We certainly hope that you all had a great Thanksgiving, and we know we sure did. Thanks for joining us. Jamal, where can they find you on Twitter?
@_AYYMALL. And if you want to reach out to me today, when this show is posted, make sure you wish me a happy birthday, man.
Hey, happy birthday, Jamal.
Happy birthday, Jamal.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. I'm dedicated. I said I'm gonna stay up on the hard side tonight, get this show done. They asked me to do it. I feel like I'm doing a great job.
If I would have given you a game ball if I had realized that you were recording on your birthday.
Yeah,
so.
Man. So I mean, it's all good though. It's not. I didn't want to do too much, and make it all about me. Even though it is all about me.
It is all about you.
I'm just playing. But
Kelly,
it's not a problem at all, man.
Kelly, where can they find you on Twitter?
They can't. They're going to have to go through Steve.
Okay.
You want to find me? You bother Steve.
Okay,
Steve is my social media bouncer.
There you go. Because I'm not on Twitter either. You have to find us at the Hogsty, and that's where you can find us. And we will be back on next week. Probably Wednesday for the Dallas Cowboy game preview show, another must-win game. And until then, we will catch you on the flip side.